Seeing at 6 p.m., I'd like to call the April 19th, 2023 regular meeting of the Kenai City Council to order. I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening and ask if you are able to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Here.
Councilmember Askin? Here. Councilmember Dothett?
Here.
Councilmember Nackstedt?
Here.
Councilmember Sonart?
Here.
Councilmember Winger?
Present.
Student Representative Thibodeau?
Here.
Mayor Gabriel?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Council. Before we get to approval of the agenda, I'd like to draw your attention to a laydown you should have in front of you with requested additions to the packet. Action, add to item H5, ordinance number 3347-2023, storefront and streetscape improvement program guide, brought by administration. Action, add to item H6, discussion action, scheduling a work session on employee recruitment and retention challenges and recommendations memo, brought to us by administration. And finally, add item P1, informational items, letter of support for Kenai Arts Center, Rasmussen grant application, brought by Mayor Gabriel. Now we'll just, it's a process point. As you remember, our clerk notified us that we were going to be approving the agenda and a consent agenda in one motion, and that's the meeting we're going to start doing that. So, Councilmember Nackstedt.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move for approval of the agenda and consent agenda, and which include the action items H5, H6, and P1. Request unanimous consent.
Second.
Is there anybody from the body that would like to amend the council agenda, amend the agenda or consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to please read the consent agenda into the record.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Approval of the regular meeting minutes of April 5th, 2023. New business action approval, bills to be ratified. New business action approval, non-objection to the renewal of liquor license for AK Inc., DBA Speedway Express, number 60206, license number 4544, brought to you by the city clerk. Introduction of ordinance number 3345, 2023, accepting and appropriating donations for constructions of the Kenai Community Dog Park, brought to you by the administration. Public hearing on May 3rd, 2023. Introduction of ordinance number 3346, 2023, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the general fund fire department for purchase of inflatable rescue boat, brought to you by the administration. Public hearing on May 3rd, 2023. And introduction of ordinance number 3347, 2023, establishing the storefront and streetscape improvement program and appropriating $50,000 from the general fund, brought to you by council members Askin and Sonart. Public hearing on May 3rd, 2023. And that is your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to the consent agenda at this time, which was just read into the record? Anybody online?
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. Seeing none, the unanimous consent was requested. Is there an objection? Seeing none, the agenda and consent agenda is approved. Council, before we get to administrative reports, I'd like to ask our, as you notice, we've got folks here from the some of our amazing students from the Kenai Central High School cheer squad that we'd like to recognize this evening, and would probably be appropriate to not have them sit through the entire meeting to get to that. So I'd ask if there's no objection that we move to the proclamation at this time. Seeing none. Can we get all the cheer squad and the coaches to come up here, please? So what I'd like to, and just a little background here. Councilmember Dothett reached out and said that we had this amazing group of students that were able to accomplish quite a bit, but they won a state champion for cheer squad. And with the help of Mr. Basin, Vice Mayor Basin, and our clerk, we were able to put together a proclamation Whereas the 2023 Alaska Schools Activity Association National Bank of Alaska Cheer State Championship competition was held at the University of Alaska Anchorage in the Alaska Airlines Center on March 21st, 2023. And whereas for the third consecutive year, the Kenai Cardinal Cheer Squad captured the Division II first place championship. And whereas the Kenai Cardinal Cheer Squad also received the Division II ASAA Academic Award with a team cumulative grade point average of, wait for it, 3.97. And whereas the squad also achieved outstanding results during the Peninsula Regional Conference, receiving the first place team award and multiple individual awards. And whereas during the Peninsula Regional Conference, the squad earned the All-Conference Team Award, and Coach Brianna Forrest was named Peninsula Conference Cheer Coach of the Year. And whereas the mayor and city council commend the Kenai Cardinal Cheer Squad for having an outstanding season and representing their school at the state championship. Now therefore, we, the mayor and council of the city of Kenai, Alaska, hereby congratulate the 2023 Kenai Cardinal Cheer Squad for receiving the Division II first place championship and for having the Division II highest cumulative point grade average. Dated this 19th day of April, 2023. I do have the original proclamation, and I would just ask that you, Coach, can hand you out the other proclamations. Great job, girls. I love the GPA part. That's my favorite part. Good. Can we get a picture? Oh. Okay. Thank you, ladies. Comments from council? Vice Mayor Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess I'll start off since my daughter's getting ready to leave. Look at her, she was first one out the door. So
Busy kid.
she takes after her mother. So I want to, I got to follow the athletes here all season long, and you guys did great work. Appreciate your hard work. I don't think what a lot of people understand is that, you know, the typical athlete that's playing basketball or playing the other sports, the cheer team has to show up for all the different activities, and they're there the entire time and put in a lot of work. And Coach, I know you put in a lot of hours with them. Thanks for everything that you've done and your support staff. Great work doing this for 3 years in a row. It shows your commitment, and the athletes here are really proud of you. So thank you.
Further comments from council? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I just want to say congratulations, ladies, on working hard and your achievements, and I look forward to hopefully having you in front of us again next year.
Further comments? Councilmember Raskin.
Congratulations on all your hard work. It really shows, and it's nice to be so proud of our students in Kenai. Congrats.
Councilmember Sonart.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Congratulations, girls and coaches. You make Kenai very proud.
Further comments? Council or Student Representative Thibodeau.
Hello. I want to say thank you guys and extremely good job. And excuse my language, but y'all are the most badass people I've ever met. So thank you guys.
Further comments? Councilmember Dawson.
Hard to follow up with that one there, but congratulations. It was pretty amazing that the GPA was what really caught my eye on that. That's an amazing accomplishment when you have a group this large to be able to have an cumulative GPA of almost, and that's about as close to a perfect score as you can get across the board, and that's pretty amazing, and that shows the quality of schools I think that we're producing here, and it's amazing to see our athletes be able to maintain a grade point average of that. That's great. Now we just need to encourage our football team to get that up there and maybe perfect.
Or hockey team. Further comments? Councilmember Naxa.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, congratulations and great work. And to have a GPA like that with a group that is so, involved with your school and dedicated. I think that just shows what achievers that you all are and what you're going to make out of yourselves in the future. So congratulations, and it's just the first step in life.
Yeah, I'll just end by saying thank you, ladies, and as a Kenai Central class of 1979 graduate, thanks for making us proud.
So, Mayor,
Yes.
can we take just a minute break so I can reach out to each one of them before they leave?
Sure, absolutely.
We'll take 5 minutes, that's
Yep.
good.
At ease, we'll take 5 minutes at ease. Back on the record, we're now on item B, council scheduled administrative reports. First up, we have fiscal year 2022 audit report, your Joy Mariner, BDO USA LLP. Joy, good to see you. Pull that down. Yeah, you can pull that down on table. Either way, Joy.
Now you can hear me. I'm actually well, I did see these ladies win at state. I was there at the Alaska Airlines Center, and they were just incredible. I was in some ways sad because my school was definitely not as good. But it was really cool to see them there, and I thought, oh, I know where they're from. So it was I was very impressed and happy to see them here. Also, not so happy that they left, because with that kind of grade point average, those are my future staff. So I was hoping I could convince them that this is the most exciting thing they could possibly do with their lives, and create future staff for Lana here and Terry, who want to have more accountants in the world. But I'll do my very best to provide you with just highlights from the audit report. For those of you who have not met me before, Joy Mariner, I think I recognize most of your faces. I serve as the lead audit partner on your audit engagement. And, really overall, we come here in October and we beat up your staff with all sorts of questions. We ask a lot of samples. We pick a lot of samples. This year, I know we talked last year about the CARES money and the audit of the CARES money. That was a new program. This year, we audited ARPA money, which is that coronavirus fiscal, I had to write it down because there's so many acronyms. The state and local fiscal recovery funds, I call them the ARPA money. So the next tranche of financial assistance associated with COVID-19 came out and was mostly spent in this current year. So we did audit both that program and the airport improvement program. Airport improvement program was about $3 million this year. So a pretty big, hefty investment on the FAA side. And so those are big programs. The AIP program is just complex to audit, and then ARPA was new program this year. Came through those compliance audits with flying colors, so no findings to report to you related to your compliance at all, which is excellent. And then overall, really, I just want to walk through, and I left my clicker over there. Kind of want to walk through with you kind of the results of the financial statement audit. We try every year to not make this boring, but what you really want is boring. So, overall, just as a high level, and I'll just come up to this executive summary. I don't know why it's in 5-point font here for you, but I'll do my best to just highlight a few quick things. First off, it is an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion on the financial statements. That's what you would want to see as the council. That means that when you submit your reports to granting agencies or the state of Alaska or users of the financial statements, that the report says that in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly your financial position and the results of your year. And that's really kudos to your team. There were no audit adjustments again this year, and no items that we identified that they didn't correct, what we call unadjusted misstatements. So I think we have a competition going, waiting for somebody to find an audit adjustment on your audits, but your team does an excellent job. And I did mention, too, that we did have an unmodified or clean opinion on your single audit and no findings associated with your grant awards that we audited, those two programs. As usual, your team was excellent to work with. They do a great job. This year, there were a lot of challenges, I'll just say, in general. You did have turnover on your end. And you also implemented a new standard called GASB 87. And that is a surprisingly painful standard where you have to add leases. You have quite a few leases here at the city. Terry was very proactive about this standard. He was putting together lease schedules years in advance and working with us, very early on to make sure that standard got implemented properly. And then, and unfortunately, we did not have our manager on the engagement who was on there last year, a local Kenai resident, actually. Grew up here, Travis. So not having Travis here definitely made everybody sad. But really met all the deadlines. The audit went very well. And your team, I would say, went above and beyond to get through having turnover on their side and having the challenges of a new standard and some new auditors on our side. I thought just overall their cooperation was excellent. Results of the audit, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I already mentioned GASB 87. Basically what it does is it requires you to report all of your leases on your statements, not just as notes or disclosures. And you have a lot of specifically airport leases, but other leases. So you now have this big lease receivable number, and a right of, essentially what we call a deferred inflow, but it's a right to let other people use those assets. And it does nothing really else other than create a whole lot of work to calculate what those numbers should be over the life of those leases. A lot of analysis went into your leases. I'm sure you have maybe more understanding of your leases than you ever wanted to have before, but Scott's always done a great job of keeping the good records on your contracts. So your legwork was less painful, I would say, than a lot of our clients in Alaska who have leases that they're paying. They don't really even know who has the agreements. They're just paying them every month. And so for you, really, it's about having a full comprehensive look at how much is the value of your lease agreements that you have signed this year, at the end of the year. There are some estimates in your statements, so these numbers in your ACFR, that's what we call your financial statement, are largely based on real numbers. So you have $1 in the bank, you know how much you paid an employee, you know how much you paid a contractor. But there are a few estimates in your statements that can fluctuate year to year. For example, your pension liabilities, those are based on state actuarial estimates that you cannot adjust. And your depreciation of your assets, so your capital assets, your infrastructure, this building is being depreciated over an estimated useful life. Industry standard useful lives. And then you also have an allowance for how collectible your accounts are. When somebody pays their bill, are they likely to pay it to you when they incur a charge? Tend to be fairly collectible. Your citizens tend to pay their bills, which is excellent. There's a new estimate this year because associated with leases is a discount rate. We call it a discount rate. It basically takes the value of the lease over the whole life of the lease and discounts it down to present value. What is it worth in today's dollars? And you're using a 5% rate, which is kind of a weighted average cost of debt is really how most of our governments are doing it, but it kind of lines up with some municipal best practices and just municipal securities rates. You don't have a lot of debt, so it's not as if you have your own debt to gauge it against, so you're using kind of an industry standard rate of 5%. Let's talk about a few quick things. I mentioned no adjustments. Internal controls. Internal controls are pretty exciting. You have a lot of them. These are the checks and balances to make sure your city's running. You sitting here with me is an internal control. An audit process, though, is an external control. We're external to the city, but you have a lot of things that you do here, like you're going to be doing later today on the budget. I'm sure everybody's excited to look through that minuscule document. So the budget controls are one of the major controls that are in place here at the city, of just setting parameters for your management about what they can and cannot do with the city's money going forward. And so we look pretty carefully at controls. How do they get implemented during the year? What are the key controls? And we report to you anything we found that we believe needs to be addressed by you as the council. So that's what we would call a significant deficiency or a material weakness. If we think there's a system design or implementation that is weak enough that you need to step in. Nothing to report there. Auditors are now starting to tell you about what we would consider to be more control deficiencies, these minor control issues. A lot of our clients are surprised that we have had these. We've always had these. Some of them are maybe a management letter comment or areas that your team could work on. We're now putting them in our letters because people are surprised when they come up and they don't know about them. But the ones that we have on the next page, one thing I want to say before we kind of dive in too much into it, that you do have 2 IT-related control deficiencies. These are not necessarily deficiencies you want to correct. Hiring a lot more IT staff or a lot more accounting staff is pretty expensive. So what's really going on, and it has been this way for many years, is you have super users, and you have 3 of them, people who have access to your IT system to do multiple things within it. Now, what we do to address this is we actually look at what they did do. So, for example, if Terry can post an entry without approval, what entries did Terry post? And did they appear proper? A lot of times these folks aren't even posting any entries. It's just having administrative level access to go in and do review or to add users or to approve a payroll clerk, for example, who can go in and do that. So, there's always that sort of balance between how much you want to pay for additional staff versus, whether you want to check a box in your IT system. But do be aware that you do have a small accounting staff, and they do have the ability to do multiple things in the IT system. The way we address that from an audit perspective depends on the situation, but we look pretty carefully at payments to any super user, and we also look at what activity a super user did in the system to make sure it seems appropriate for what they should be doing. And we didn't identify anything to report to you on that end. So that's what those control deficiencies relate to, that super user access, and then just who's reviewing those users during the course of the year. And that's something that's a good best practice that your IT system is doing, your IT department is doing, but not necessarily documenting that they've done that review. So that's why we have those internal control items this year. Do you have questions for me on that? Okay, I also have to tell you if we had any difficulties or disagreements or consultations or anything like that, nothing in that realm. And I do have a couple other slides here just around our independence and other areas if you ever want to refer to them. With that, I'd like to move on to the actual financial statement. I realize I only have a few more minutes, so I'll do the very high-level summary. Keep in mind that these are 2022 financials, so I think you're almost all the way through 2023, so I wouldn't necessarily base any decisions on what's in this. You're getting regular financial information from your team, and because we had no audit adjustments, that makes me believe that you're getting good information throughout the year. We don't audit the financials that you're getting in January or April, but we do look to make sure that adjustments are being made throughout the year. Your ACFR, as we call it, Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, you probably have a nice looking bound copy. Mine's binder clipped. But this is a full report. It doesn't just include your financial statements, and I don't have that up on the screen, so you're not going to see that here in a minute. We can probably turn that one off. But you should have that on a laydown copy, and I believe it's also available on your website. This is what's actually submitted to the federal government in the White House, actually, in the clearinghouse, along with your single audit report. As I mentioned, we didn't have any findings on that. But this does become public information, both on your website and on the federal government's website. And it includes more than just basic financial statements. If you just turn with me really quickly to the table of contents, which is right at the beginning, you have introduction information just about your city, who are you, where you're located, your organizational chart, who are your principal officials. You also have the financial section. So this is the actual part we audit. The basic financial statements, the auditor's report is in here. You can see you have a lot of detail in supplementary information about your pension. That's the state PERS system, as well as fund level details. So if you want more information about any specific fund, you can go, for example, to, if you want to see the Senior Citizen Special Revenue Fund, you can go to page 89 and find that information. And then you also have a statistical section, my favorite part of the whole thing. This is a great reference document for you. So if you ever want to look back and find out who are your principal taxpayers or how much were your taxable sales over the course of the last 10 years, the statistics provide 10 years worth of data. So that's not a required part of the basic statements, but they are required for an ACFR. And your team submits the financial report for certificate every year with the Government Finance Officers Association. I'd say there's really only a handful of Alaskan governments who can and do an ACFR and get the certificate every year. So that really just speaks to the quality of the finance department that you have in place. Let's look at a couple of highlights. And after this meeting, I'm sure, you can always read through the MD&A, and the MD&A starts on page 11. I bring that up because the management discussion analysis is really a good read if you just want to hear the why. The financial statements themselves present the data, but they don't really tell you why the numbers changed or what's causing the change. The MD&A is written by your team to essentially explain the movements from last year to this year. So that's really a great place to start if you're just wanting to dive in and learn about the financial statements of your government. So I'll throw that out if you really want to learn more about what's going on. This MD&A is a really great place to start. The basic financial statements start on page 20, and I'm gonna go there because I think it's important for us to just cover a couple of key things. And I have mine clipped for a reason because I can look at multiple pages at once. So the statement of net position provides an overall arching view of your financial position here at the city. Assets are things that you own, liabilities, things you owe to others, and what's left over is what we call net position. And assets, not surprisingly, are largely related to capital assets. Property and equipment is your largest one. So that's the infrastructure assets, the water sewer system, that's the buildings, that kind of thing is all part of your property and equipment in service. Airport is in there as well. And then you can see a new one here, leases receivable. This is that new standard I talked about where they have an actual value of how much your leases are worth over time. So 4.4 million at the end of the year. That's offset by what we call a deferred inflow. So you don't recognize all that 4.4 million right out the gate. You still recognize it as you earn it. But it is this year at about 4.4 million, and that's new. Other assets you own, cash, you have receivables, people owe you money because they've received some sort of service. And then you do have some other assets related to your pensions. One of the benefit plans is actually at the state level, the OPEB, which is the other post-employment benefit plan, is actually in an asset position now, surprisingly enough. So you actually have an asset there, about 8.5 million, because one of the state pension other benefit-related plans is actually in a positive position now. Liabilities, things you owe to others. The biggest there is your net pension liability. That's at the state level. You don't pay it off. You just continue to pay at the state mandatory level, which is currently at 22%. So that's 11.6 million. And then you have other things you owe to vendors, where you've incurred a cost but not yet paid them, or to your employees where they've worked an hour but you haven't paid them for that hour yet. And then you also have a very small amount of long-term debt here at the end of the year for your just your actual outstanding bonds and loans. And I was just actually talking with Terry about things that we're seeing in the bond market and prices going up. And I know there's lots of decisions for cities to be making, but from a financial health perspective, not having that debt there means that your liabilities are really small. You have a strong amount of kind of current assets that aren't due in the next year, not to pay off debt at a high level in the next year, so not over leveraged at this point. And then what's left over is your net position or equity. The unrestricted equity is really what you want to be looking at, but I think that's best for us to look at that at a fund level because that tells a better story about what's really going on. So if we can turn to page 24 and 25, and I promise not to spend too much time on these statements. I'm not going through every page. But page 24 and 25 give you that same information, but at a fund level. So if you just want to see what's happening with the general fund or the airport or the water sewer fund, you can see that here. And when you look at the general fund in your total fund balance at 15.5 million, that's a really important number to be monitoring over time. Your total expenditures in a year, last year was just under 16 million. So in total fund balance, you have almost a year's worth of expenditures, but those have been restricted or assigned or committed for other purposes, including for making sure you have fund balance stabilization, right? So the actual unassigned amount of the general fund is about 1.5 million at the end of the year. Airport fund also has about a 3.9 million in fund balance, and the water sewer fund a 1.3 million. So let's take a quick look at the change in the fund balance from last year to this year. Well, one thing I forgot to mention is your bonds, I believe, get paid off here very quickly. But really your total bond balance is about $850,000 at the end of last year. So a pretty small dollar amount there. Page 28 and 29, that's where all the magic happens. This is what actually happened during the year. So you can see all the ins and outs. Revenues are things coming in the door for taxes. Intergovernmental revenue is grants, really. That's what they call it here in this world, but it's the same as grants. So that's where you're going to see your ARPA money coming in, your AIP money coming in. Charges for services, these are, fees. Essentially, you charge for people at the boat launch or those kinds of services, and including water sewer. You can see that most of that is water sewer charges. And then investment is a loss this year. And a lot of that there at the permanent fund just because it holds the most amount of investments. We're all hoping that's a temporary thing, and I know already we've seen improvements in that in 2023. Miscellaneous revenues is a smattering of a whole lot of other things that fall into these funds. For total revenue, they're at the fund level of $25.7 million. What was it spent on? Lots of different things. You can see by category, general government versus public safety. A lot this year on airport capital improvements and capital outlay. Keep in mind there is some amount of ARPA money in there as well that was spent and used largely for governmental services to kind of supplement your governmental services. I think the total ARPA spending was just under $2 million this year. And that's really the highlights I wanted to talk about. We can quickly look at congregate housing on page 31 and 32. Congregate housing at the end of the year was about a $3 million net position. That is a decrease from last year. It was about $3.1 million. So it's about, if you look on page 32, you can see it's about a loss of $61,000. And so that's something to continue to monitor. The Congregate Housing Fund is in a loss position from an operating income perspective, but keep in mind there's about $140,000 of depreciation in there. So that's not true cash out the door. That's just the use of the building over time. So there's not enough costs or revenues to replace that in the future fully, at least at the existing cost. So it's something to just be kind of monitoring as you move forward with that program. But I know I've got personal experience with people there, and I know that it's a big help to many. So there's always a decision to be made in the budget process about how much you cover in terms of total costs. The rest of the financials include the notes. You can find more information if you want to know what your cash and investments are held in, if you're wanting more information about your capital assets or your debt. I'm not going to go through all of the notes in detail unless there's specific notes you'd like me to cover. But really, I think it's just a testament to your team that they can put this all together. We draft the statements for a lot of our clients, but not for you. And it's a big undertaking. And it's an excellent report. And with that, I just want to thank your team for a great job and answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Ms. Mariner? Councilmember Nexton.
Thank you. Good to see you again, Joy, and I always appreciate your presentation, and it's not boring, not at all. But the reoccurring thing is every year is that the city is really on a high standard and no adjustments and all of that since I've been on council for 9 years, and it's been that way. And I appreciate that. That just shows what we're doing here. But I'm just kind of curious, outside of the city of Kenai, how other cities rank as far as, not specific ones, just do they have adjustments and stuff like that? I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to say Kenai must be a 10, but where would we find a lot of the other municipalities?
I would say it's a bit of a mixed bag because not all of our clients call us when they have questions about how something could get booked. So I won't say that, Terry and Lana always know the answers, but they are always working to make sure throughout the year the records are correct. So I'll get a call in July, or Michelle, who's our director on the engagement and has been for many years, we had a call, hey, we were trying to book this, or hey, we're considering doing this, how would we book it? And that's the kind of interaction with your professionals that you want, because when the actual audit starts, well, that's not an audit adjustment then. That's then something they identified, or if we walk in here and there's something that they're still working on, they say, hey, you're not allowed to audit that yet because I am not done. And that's something that's just a communication piece. So you can certainly review council minutes from other cities to find out which ones struggle on the communication piece. But I'd say from my perspective, it really comes down to a team that's willing to kind of work together throughout the year instead of just thinking of an audit as a one-time deal that happens once a year. It's kind of always having in the mind what's going to go in here so that when you're facing those challenges, they come out. So I'm not answering your question perfectly, but I usually do see audit adjustments at clients where they're not, either don't have the capacity And that's something right now you're in the middle of hiring and hopefully hiring a new finance director. They don't have the capacity to keep up with the questions throughout the year, so things sort of pile up at the end. So that's certainly a great question.
Thank you for that, and it wasn't completely a fair question either. I mean, they're your other clients and whatnot, but, I just know where we are, and I just didn't know where everybody else generally was, and I think that's well enough.
Further questions? Yeah, that was kind of running through my mind is what does a bad news look like? Because since I've been sitting here, we really haven't had it year over year, and pretty consistent. And I know I was able to meet with your team as they were doing the audit, and appreciate the reach out because you guys work for council, so we need to understand that what our role is here and what your role is for us. And so I always encourage council to swing by and meet with your folks too, just to get an idea of how you're doing. It's always amazing to me. They very busy whenever I'm going there, so appreciate that. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Joy. Appreciate it. Next up, under scheduled administrative reports, we have Spruce Park Beetle Mitigation Update, City of Kenai Fire Chief Tony Pryor. Hello, Tony.
Look at that. Put my notebook down there and it turned it on for me. Just wanted to give you guys a quick overview of where we're at so far on the Spruce Park Beetle. So the initial contract that we gave Doug Cook Tree Service is happening out there towards the north side right now. So if you guys were to drive up Float Plain Basin, you'd see all the work that's kind of currently been done on there. So this is a picture right here of it, and we'll have a short video to kind of show it here after we're done with the slides here. But on the left, you can see what's already been done. And then on the right side, you can see what it looks like when it's not. So there's a lot of log decks in there, and you'll see in the video the amount that's in there. And those will be moved out towards the road probably after mid-May. So we kind of met with him to kind of see his timeline today on where he's moving forward to. But there's a substantial difference on what it looks like, and I encourage you to kind of go out there and look and see the change in the landscape. So they call it Firescape actually instead of the landscape. But as we're moving forward, we want to look at what's next for us, what's our next project's going to be. So, Shelley, can you advance for me? So this is some of the other work that's been done by Division of Forestry. So on Ryan's Trail, they're behind Main Street. You'll see some of that work that was already done. So they had some crews that were at the end of the year had some things that they were able to kind of come over and do for us, some downtime. So we asked them if they would come over and do some work on one of the trails that was here that looked pretty bad when we were looking at one of the other areas. And as you can see the piles that are in there, if the pointer worked on the screen, but it doesn't, you can kind of see them, and I know you've driven by there, so it's pretty easy to see how much it's changed. Even if you drive on the back side of Main Street, the actual hotel part, you can see what it's going to look like. And again, now that you can even drive on the back side of Woodland Subdivision, you can see all the way across the gully through the area and almost to the airport lands. So it is definitely changing some, but Division of Forestry has been great for us, partnering with us, and they contacted us, said, hey, is there any projects that you have that you want us to come over? We got some downtime, and they've been super good to work with. So that was some of them on the Ryan's Trail. Phase 2, what we're looking at, so the next gully over, or No Name Creek, I guess is what some people call it, but starting from the bluff going up, there's another gully that goes all the way up into the airport lands. And that's the next project that we want to kind of, as we're moving our way over here, that's the next one. As you can see in some of these videos here, there's a lot of dead spruce bark beetle kill in those areas too. And that one will extend all the way from the beach. Basically, those two creeks converge down there at the beach. And then this one comes up over there. You can see the Weaver Brothers parking lot, the ball fields over here. And then it comes up. So the city owns this whole chunk of property in here. And you guys may have seen it on the maps that were included in your packet. But those go all the way up, and then it'll continue into it. One of the things that we wanted to make sure we were doing as part of our community wildfire protection plan was protection of infrastructure. And as you all know, our 3 million gallon tank is one of the critical pieces of infrastructure we have. And that doesn't look like much to the south of that, but there's a lot of timber from there all the way to the end of the airport up there. And one of the bigger chunks of land that we're looking at taking care of and mitigating next. So that was one of them, and it meets our plan. This is the northern part of that. So within airport lands, and you can see on the left there, that's the road. And then where the airport kind of comes out there, and it doesn't look like, you wouldn't think it's that much, but there's a lot of timber in there, and there's a lot of dead stuff. And again, I encourage you, if you drive down Float Plain Basin, you'll see it. And some of the pictures, depending on what you get, you can really see it, and they really stand out depending on what time of the day it is and the sun shining on there. You can really see the dead beetle kill on the one on the right. So this is the next one as we're moving through on phase 3. So phase 3, there's our senior center there, and that gully right there is part of the city's land. And then as it moves forward and up into there, you have the other areas of Millennial Square, which is another part of that. And then we'll be moving kind of northwards all the way up through here. That's the airport lands all the way up to where Willow comes around, North Willow comes around and meets the escape route. And there's a lot of timber. There's a big chunk in there. And talk about some more of your infrastructure. You have the youth facility that's in there, Flight Service Center, bordering some of the major Walmart and some of those over there as well. We have a lot of things that we should be looking at protecting in there. So that's the phase 3 as we move forward in there. We want to take care of some of that land that comes up right through the middle of the city. Phase 4 and 5, the Field of Flowers, the golf course areas to the north and south of the Spur Highway on Beaver Loop. Again, we have another critical on the 1 million gallon tank out there, and our water pumps, our pump stations out there. So that's another one that we want to look at. And then the soccer fields to the north of us. Those are other areas that we're looking at moving forward. So if I were to look at what we currently kind of have bids on and the price per acre to take care of that, some of that mitigation, we're somewhere looking around 1.3 million. So we'll continue to look for additional grants. I spoke with Diane Campbell today as we went out and looked at some of the work that's being done. And the current money that we're spending on the current phase is $282,000 was the agreement with Doug Cook Tree Service. So which leaves us about $100,000 left over of forestry money, Division of Forestry money that we had agreed upon with them. So I think there's going to be the opportunity for us, and we'll pursue it, to use the rest of that money to move over into phase 2. I know it was designated as phase 1 in the current project we're on, but I think we're going to be able to partner with them and use it and move forward to the next phases, along with the federal money that we have. So we still do have the $385,000 of federal money to use for the next phases as well. So just kind of wanted to give you guys an update of where we're at and what we're looking at for moving forward.
Questions? Vice Mayor Benson.
Thank you, Mayor. Good presentation, Chief. Couple questions for you. And I don't know, maybe the council knows, the response that the city of Kenai has, you guys prevent a lot of wildland fires throughout the summertime because of your quick response. I don't know if the public understands, because of your quick response and the capabilities of your department, what takes place here. When you look at mitigating these areas, are you also looking at trying to be able to set up a path to where your guys can get into them quicker too with their equipment, or is that one of the things that you look at?
Yeah, thank you. That is definitely something with some of these trails that they're making in there. It gives you tons of opportunity to get in there quick. In some of the areas, to the north, there's not much trails, and you end up stretching a lot of line, which is manpower intensive. And it's critical for us to get Division of Forestry and their helicopters, their aircraft in here quickly. And that's kind of a make or break for us because, as you know, it can expand rather quickly, and that would overtax our manpower very fast. So access to all of these areas is critical. And with that program that we're doing on these, that'll give us a lot more access and hopefully kind of solve a lot of the mitigation problems. Your landscape is going to change for sure.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Thank you, Chief Pryor, for coming and giving this presentation. I encourage everybody to go look at the floodplain basin. It is amazing how much that has really, truly changed just in the landscape. I walked out one day, if you're not familiar, it's right next to my house. Walked out one day, it was nice, lush, dead forest. Walk out the next day, and you can see all the way through. So it really does make a difference in just the fire break that we're going to see in a lot of these residential neighborhoods. One of my concerns going forward is, are we working with Kenaitze on a fire break for Borgen Lane and the assistant living home that they have down Borgen Lane? Chuda House, there's no fire break, and the dead trees literally go up to the road and right up to the building, and they have somebody close to 100 years old that lives in the facility. Most of the people there don't drive, so there is no exit plan. I know one point in time they said the exit would be able to go through the prison fence, but then when I looked at the snow and where they plowed the snow, it was right there in the gate access to the prison. So if there was a fire, that whole Chuda House would be just sitting duck for evacuations. Are we able to work with them on that?
Those are some of the areas that were actually identified in our community wildfire protection plan, was continuing that fire break to the north of all communities. So they've done some work in Nikiski, as Vice Mayor Baisden knows, and Sterling. And so the plan was to meet those if we can, but that will be a substantial cost. So we will look at those, but it is part of the plan. We're just looking at right now what we can do with the funds we have and kind of moving forward. And again, protecting that, you're right, that's correct. Chuda House is actually in Nikiski's fire service area. We do have down Borgen and Sunset is the end of ours, but we would be called out there if there was something that happened. We would probably be there first to take care of that if there was a fire. So we do look at all of those, and we try to remember that what we want to do affects the most or the best bang for our buck. So these gullies that affect so many homeowners up and down there and the businesses as well is the ones that we were looking at first, and we will continue to move on there. There is still grant funding that's coming out for these, and it's not just us. The whole West Coast is looking at major problems like that, and it's extending even more east all the time. So the Western Fire Chiefs Association is working diligently to figure out funding and how we're going to solve this problem. And we are on the peninsula probably one of the worst in the state, as you can see some of the mapping of the areas that's ripe for wildfire. We do have some videos, but for the sake of time, if you guys would like, if you want to come over, I'd be happy to show you some of the other areas, but it gets footage. And one of the things we'll be looking for is getting drone work to help us with our RFPs for contractors so they can see it. Plus, it gives us a before and after, so we can show the actual value of the money that we used for the federal and for the state. And I know just walking with Diane today, she was very happy and amazed at the change in the landscape. And I think we want to continue to do that same kind of work.
Councilmember Nexon.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a kind of a general question, and it has to do with some areas. Is it more feasible just to down the timber and leave it? It gets it down, it's cheaper and it's quicker. We also have pretty weak soils here, so you take all of that out, nothing is going back into the soils, and just kind of the farmer in me, part of that. But is that a possibility, or is that even a good idea?
That's actually what we're doing with it. It's called a lop and scatter. So when they're downing these trees right now, and maybe Shelley, if you want to play that while I'm talking the 6-7, you can see what it looks like in there. And the only thing that they're bringing out is the actual logs. So the limbs and a lot of the debris left from it stays in place, and it will go into the soil. The problem is if you left too much of it in one spot, you have that ground fuels, they call it. So it would just be a continuous ability for it to burn really quick. And you have to make it through the first couple of years to where that stuff starts decaying before it's no longer a problem, or you don't have to worry about it as much. But in the first couple of years, when all of that debris and the logs and the limbs are down, that is a ground fuels that can spread really quickly. And then when you have grass growing amongst it, it will spread fast. But you can see the difference in here of what it looks like, what hasn't been treated and what has. And plus, one of the goals of the plan or the agreement with forestry was to provide some of those logs for firewood. So to bring those out and make them available for the public. Once the equipment is out of there and we can actually get the logs moved over and there's no longer working, we'll start letting people come in there. They can come in when the equipment is moved out there, but they'll have to go back in a ways to kind of get it. It's a little bit more work. One of the things that they'll probably be doing from mid-May through June is moving those logs out closer to the road so people can get access to them and cut them. But it changes quite a bit, as you can see in there. So I know the trails guys will be super happy to be able to use some of those probably in the future, but.
Councilmember Dawson.
I just had a question, speaking of trails, on the Main Street trails, you mentioned the piles that they had put up. Are those along the trails gonna be removed, or is that just gonna be?
The ones here on Ryan's Creek?
On Ryan's Creek, yeah.
Once we get the equipment in there, or we can get equipment in there, we will try to lop and scatter it. In certain areas where it looks bad like that, like the park, they're moving into the municipal park tomorrow. So you'll see some work in there. We'll have signs up. We don't want anybody in the park for the next week, but they want to remove all of it out of there. So some of the places like that, our goal will be to remove all of it as best we can.
Yeah, I understand. And then the other question, I know on that parcel, and some of these parcels, one kind of has been known for like the homeless camp type things that we have some of in kind of behind the Weaver's Park there, Weaver's yard there by the softball fields. When they open those up, is there any thought about about going to cleaning that up now that's going to be a lot more obvious, or? No.
I'll defer that. I don't know what our plans are quite for the homeless population on that. I would imagine once it's open, it's not as secluded for them anymore. So I'd leave that to Dave. So
I wasn't trying to put you there. I just was.
I'll put
I know
him
that
on the
there's some
spot.
issues with that back in there in the past. And
Yeah.
as we open it up,
as well as the same area down by the senior center in that gully there too. There's some that's been there as well. And that's one of the reasons why we're trying to mitigate those areas, because we know it is a targeted area and the potential is much higher.
Councilmember Winger.
I just wanted to follow up. Parks and Rec has been really good about coming out and removing the stuff from the homeless camps when they've been in there, so.
Further questions, comments? I just, you pretty much answered all the questions that I had, Tony. Other than, this is all done on, city-owned property, right? Is there any outreach or for folks that, private property owners, you know, that would like to do mitigation on their property or throughout their subdivisions. You know, so see that as a you know, a high threat to, you know, hazard level. I know over like in BIP, I know we've over the last couple of years had, you know, it seems like an exponential amount of beetle kill. And a lot of the homeowners are working that themselves, but for folks that don't, are there resources that they can take advantage of?
Yeah, so with the amount of funding that we have right now, we tried to focus on getting like the critical infrastructure and what could be the best utilization of the money, which is protecting. If you really think about it in your Firewise, this is your extended area, what they call it. So between that 30 feet to 100 feet or further away from your property on Firewise, that's the area we are really targeting. If you look at all of these homes as they border those gullies coming up through there and the businesses. So we are focusing on that, and we can help more than just a single person or single homeowner, but that is part of the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Our plan that is one of the areas, but again, it takes a lot of funding to do that. And as I pointed out, I think we're looking at 1.3 to even kind of get us the areas we're still looking at.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It definitely is especially when you you know, look back at all the different areas and the work that needs to be done, no question about it. And I know, like, for my neighbor and I worked together and did a lot of it, still have some to do, but I know folks, you might have elderly people that, you know, would like to do something about, especially when you get later and these things are standing hazards, you know, even in windstorms and things like that.
We have provided, you know, one of the reliefs also for there is the slash disposal site. So we do have that as a way to help the community members. They don't have to worry about either driving over there. They have a place to get rid of it, so it doesn't need to stay on their property. And that'll be opening up again soon.
Further questions, comments? See none. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate the update, and I assume we'll have one at some point later that'll kind of keep us abreast of.
Yeah, our intent will be to try to go out for RFP for the next phases pretty soon, to have those bid on so that the contractors are ready to go when fall time comes and the time where they can get in there with equipment and the beetles are not flying anymore. We are extending the current one. We were going to stop in May, but because of the temperatures right now, beetles it's got to be reaching temperatures above 60 degrees and staying above 40 at night for them to start actually moving and flying. So we're going to be extending this cutting season for the current contractor 2 weeks into May and kind of monitoring the temperatures to see if we can let him work as long as he possibly can.
Thank you. Next up, under item C, we have no scheduled public. Next, after that is item D, unscheduled public comment. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to the council at this time on anything that is not on the agenda or consent agenda? Anybody know? Seeing none, we'll move to public hearings. First up, item E1, ordinance number 3342-2023. Increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the Congregate Housing Fund for costs in excess of budgeted amounts. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3342, 2023.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3342-2023? Seeing none in council or online, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance number 3342, 2023 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have ordinance number 3343-2023, accepting and appropriating a volunteer fire assistance grant from the United States Department of Agriculture Forest Service passed through the State of Alaska Division of Forestry for the purchase of forestry firefighting equipment. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3343, 2023.
I second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3343-2023? Seeing none in chambers or online, we'll bring it back to council. Comments from council? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Dothit,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted,
Yes?
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden,
Yes.
Councilmember Askin.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance number 3343, 2023 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have item E3, ordinance number 3344-2023, amending Kenai Municipal Code, Chapter 8.20 fireworks control by removing references to city permits which are redundant to the state's firework display permit. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to enact ordinance 3344, 2023.
I second it.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3344-2023? Seeing none in chamber or online, we'll bring it back to council. Comments from council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question. In this redundancy, if we, what kind of control we might be losing, if we're losing any at all, or what kind of interaction we have. We have an airport. The airspace is controlled pretty much the whole city, so therefore, you know, it needs to be notified. And does the state do that, or is there something that that the city is going to have some involvement in, even though we're not issuing a permit?
Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Naxted, I'll take a stab at this, and then I'll let Tony fill in any blanks I may miss. But what this really represents, I think, is I'm really appreciative of our fire marshal for bringing this to our attention. Is what this ordinance does is it's going to remove some redundancy in the permitting process. So the state of Alaska goes through all the same standards that we would go through in the issuance of a permit, but the one key thing that they do is they have to have concurrence from the local jurisdiction. So they look to the city that we concur with the whatever show is going to go on. So without our concurrence, they're not going to issue a permit. So we're not losing any control. They still will come to the city and to the department, and the department will do all the work that they're currently doing to make sure that all of those safety things are in place, and that we concur with the issuance of the permit, and then the state will issue that permit. So I think it used to be that they would go to the state, and the state would look to us, and then there was supposed to be another permit process here at the city, so it was really redundant and the exact same thing. So this will eliminate that. I think get some of the red tape out of the way, but we don't lose any control. So I really appreciate the department bringing this forward. I think it's the way government should work to get these things out of the way.
Further questions or comments, deliberation? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Naxted,
Yes?
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden,
Yes.
Councilmember Askin,
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance number 3344, 2023 is enacted.
Thank you. We're on item E4, resolution number 2023-26, amending the city council's procedures for commissions, committees, and council on aging, policy number 2016-01, and renumbering to policy number 20.020. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt resolution 2023-26, request unanimous consent.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2023-26? Seeing none in chambers or online, we'll bring it back to council. Comments from council, deliberation? Seeing none, clerk, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2023-26 is adopted. Next up, we have resolution number 2023-27, repealing the city council's unnumbered student representative policy, repealing the Parks and Recreation Commission student representative policy number 2018-01, and enacting City of Kenai student representative policy number 20.100. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2023-27, request unanimous consent.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2023-27? Seeing none in chambers or online, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council? Councilmember Naxton.
Yeah, I do have a question of the clerk, not about this particular resolution, but is this the last one of these? We've been going through all these.
Ms. Sainer.
Through the mayor, thank you, Councilmember Nexted. Yes, this is the last one. So with tonight's action, I'll be able to finally finalize and compile that document that has all the policies in one place and get those distributed.
Good. Yeah, the follow-up question is, all the policies will be in one book. Will that be posted online on the website too for everybody to find?
Yep, I'll email it out to all of our boards and commission members. Our council members will put it on the website, and I will print at request copies.
Further discussion? Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2023-27 is adopted. Brings us to item E6, resolution number 2023-28, approving a 12-month extension of time for good cause for the completion of permanent improvements for a lease between the City of Kenai and Schillings Rental LLC for airport reserve lands described as Lot 5A, Block 1, FBO subdivision, 2018 replat. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2023-28 and request unanimous consent.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2023-28? Mr. Bannock.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you for hearing this resolution tonight. I apologize. I'm Dwayne Bannock, representing Schilling Rentals LLC, Post Office Box 3426 Kenai. There is a two-page memo in the back of in your packet tonight from my coworker, Mr. Lunt, outlining our specific reasons for asking for a 24-month extension. Your consideration of our request is appreciated, and I'm happy to answer to the best of my ability any questions.
Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight, Dwayne. It's a 12-month extension, but with the possibility of another 12-month extension, what we're doing here. But the caveat in there is that in a year's time, if you're ordering a building and it's not arrived yet, that the rest would be strongly recommended, of course, to be extended. Is that an issue in your business plan? I mean, you must be getting close after 2 years to ordering a building, I hope. To put words into your mouth.
Could you turn your mic on, please, Dwayne? Oh, don't worry.
It could be. That's what I will give you today. If you refer to the letter from Mr. Lunt, you will see that there are many, many, many variables. In a perfect world 2 years ago, when I came before you and when this lease was approved, we should be having a ribbon cutting ceremony right now. That was the plan. There's a lot of variables. So I cannot give you a yes or no answer to that very good question. Obviously, I'm familiar with I read the resolution, and we have had many great conversations with members of the administration on the matter. Will it be a problem? I'll let you know next year.
Follow up?
If I could just follow up, I'm just kind of, the cost of steel buildings. I see that there are some others going up. Perhaps they're smaller, different construction. What is the percentage of the cost increases that you're seeing on a structure? That doesn't make it quite there where it'll work for you right now, but did 2 years ago. What is the fair?
The most recent hangar that we put up was engineered at $1.2 million. I can tell you that we're just shy of $2 million in that building.
Vice Mayor Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mr. Bannock, I know that you asked for 24 months, and I guess this might be a question also for the city manager. Why did we not extend this for 24 months? Why did we only do 12 months?
Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Basin, or Vice Mayor Basin, apologies. So the predominant reason is that code only allows a 12-month extension. So within KMC 2110 OAO G5, it allows for a 12-month extension. It would have to have been a non-code ordinance to grant a 24-month extension. The city planner and I, Ms. Mitchell, met with Mr. Schilling and Mr. Lunt, did I say his name correctly? Early February, had this discussion. The fact is, right now, they're unsure of if they're even going to build on that property because of these cost escalations. I know they met this week, earlier this week on Monday, with our group to talk about potentially relocating to another lease lot that they have for construction of the hangar for Guardian's fixed wing operations. So it was about the fact that, you know, I think there's a lot of question on whether or not the project's actually going to happen. And, you know, I think it's prudent to grant the one-year extension because I don't think all those things, and I think there are a lot of variables, so I think they deserve the flexibility to work on that over the next year. And like Councilmember Naxted alluded, if they've got a contract in hand to build, they've got buildings on order, and they simply can't get the construction done, at that time, I think it would be prudent for the city to consider a non-code ordinance, which is, you know, an exception to our code, or an exception to our normal practices, to help that project get completed. That's why we looked at 1 year. That's what code allowed, and that's why we brought it forward in this manner.
Vice Mayor Basin.
Thank you. Just to follow up, so, Mr. Bannock, I think what I'm hearing from you is your group's looking for certainty, and 12 months doesn't give you certainty. And unless I'm missing something, maybe the airport manager can chime in here, unless somebody else is fighting for this property, which I know that Schillings typically have done a lot of good work in the city with the buildings that they've put up and what they're trying to do. Mr. Bannock basically could come in tomorrow and say, I'm just going to drop this, and then come back and reapply, and he could get 2 years. So we're just kind of playing a game here by us doing this because they have another avenue to accomplish this. Am I thinking of that right, Mr. Bannock?
You are.
So I guess from city council's position, unless I'm missing something that somebody else wants this, I want to try to make them successful. And if we can make them successful by giving them 24 months and that doesn't do anything wrong for us, we should probably try to accomplish that with today's environment that we're working in.
Mr. Blair.
Yeah, so just one comment on that. That's certainly a possibility and something Mr. Bannock and I have talked about. What that also with them, if they get this 12-month lease extension, that actually gives them the opportunity to apply for a new lease from the safety of their existing lease. And that also gives them the opportunity to change the scope of this project as to what they promised the city that they would build. So I think that is a possibility and an avenue that is available to them. But we can't, you know, I guess from an administrator's perspective, we're recommending that we follow code. You know, if you don't want to follow code, then you would need to give us direction to bring back a non-code ordinance to give them the extra time.
Vice Mayor Basin.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I guess
I was going to say it would actually be better to pass this ordinance because their lease actually expires at the end of May, if I'm correct.
The development timeline ends, not the lease.
Right, you're right. I misspoke.
Thank you.
But a non-code ordinance would take 30 days to enact and then 30 days to become effective. So it'd be better to do that on top of this resolution rather than fail this resolution. if you layer the two, if that was what you wanted to do. Just so you know, also the Schillings, is it LLC? Schillings Rentals LLC?
One Shilling, multiple rentals, LLC.
Schilling Rentals LLC is not in a unique position. There's other leaseholders on the airport that are in a similar position, and I think that it's important that council treat them equally in their requests. So what happens tonight can affect what will happen with other leaseholders potentially on the airport as well.
Vice Mayor Basil.
Thank you, and I appreciate it from legal. And I haven't spent any time with administration. I guess I'll finish off here. I just want to make sure that, and dealing with everybody over there at the airport, you know, one of the comments that we hear from the public is the city of Kenai sometimes is not as business friendly as we should be. And let's make sure that we go out of our way if we can. And because of the environment we are in, I mean, we're getting ready to have conversations dealing with employees in our budget and how inflation and everything, and we can't hire people and everything that's taking place in this unique situation. They're in that same unique situation right now, and I know they're not alone. So this might be one of those times where we go outside of the code to help these groups that are local here, putting money back into our community.
Councilmember Dothett.
I tend to think the 12-month is, I agree with staff on this and administration. It's not preventing them from doing anything. We're just following our code. In 12 months, they show, just like any other rental agreement that we would have with any other agreement of any other of the lessees, 12 months, they come before us and say, we're moving forward, it's looking good. We do another 12 months and we continue on. We do lots of 12 months extensions, and I think there's no reason in this light to think that we're preventing anything. They don't have grant funding, I don't believe, that's going to say that if they don't have a 2-year commitment on the city's part to get this done, that they're not going to have the funding. So I think the 12-month agreement isn't preventing, and we're not showing that we're not willing to work with them. I think we're just following our code and continuing down the path that we're extending it another 12 months, and in 12 months, we'll reassess and see where we're at, and that's what they're basically going to be doing too. And so I agree with just passing this resolution as is, and if we want to reapproach it with administration and possibly doing something outside the books, then we can do that at a later date. But I think moving forward for everything with what administration said, to keep everything on task for time efficiency for sure, passing their 12-month resolution seems appropriate to me.
Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure that, to be clear with council, that, you know, any further action on this a year from now will require a non-code ordinance. So the code gives the ability to extend one time for 12 months. So anything in the future is going to be a non-code ordinance, just to be clear.
Further questions or comments? I guess I do have a question. Do you feel there's a like a elevated level of uncertainty if we don't do 12 months tonight? Or I mean, well, we'd have to do the 12 months because apparently it'd be a non-code ordinance with approving this. I have absolutely no problem doing this. I want to make sure you guys get your project done. So, but just, you know, we're sort of getting hung up a little bit about sort of process here. So I guess I'd leave it at that and ask if you feel there's uncertainty on your side or that the city wouldn't be willing to move forward.
I think I can say there is a very good reason we asked for 24 months. Some of that shall remain a little bit confidential. I hope you'll understand that. We are dealing with more than one potential customer. Our goal is to have a large facility on that lot that we will make a lot of money on, that will improve the city, and that we'll end up writing big property tax checks for. That is our goal. We live in an ever-changing world, and many of the things that we are negotiating with right now are, as my coworker said, outside of our direct control. You'll forgive me in advance if I can't go into the specifics of that.
Vice Mayor Pazon.
Thank you, and I think we need to be aware of that, dealing with the type of hangar that I think most of us realize is gonna be built here and what they're working on. We have competition down the road. If things don't work out here, they have another airport they can take this to. I don't want us to stand in that way too, so we need to be thinking about that when we're having this conversation.
Yeah, I can certainly appreciate that. Well, the resolution before us is for a 12-month extension, so,
I think it's already been asked for unanimous consent on this for approval of the 12 months. I would say that if we're going to do that, they can move forward, and it'll, this buys more time to move forward with a out-of-code resolution, excuse me, I'm not sure the exact terminology on that, but at a later date, in the next probably 60 days, if they want, we could go about that. But if we don't do this tonight, it's not going to help at all. That's where I'm at.
right, I guess, I just want to be clear in my mind what we're doing here and maybe defer to either Terry or maybe Scott. So approving this gives them the option to still come in. We're not, I mean, maybe the question is for Mr. Bennett, are you expecting a 24-month approval tonight? I think maybe start to.
No, sir. In our meetings with the administration, they're very, very clear. I'm here to mostly just to answer your questions. I wasn't at the last meeting with the administration on this particular matter, but I've been fully briefed on it. But I wanted to reiterate that the ask was indeed for 24 months. I'm being coy, and you'll understand purposefully that I am. But I wanted to make sure that you knew the ask was for 24 months.
Yep, I want to fully understand your position before we move forward. Okay.
I just would add, we have gotten a couple of what I would call reasonable workarounds from the administration. I would say that, and I would say thank you for providing those. In that scenario, this becomes the first step. If I could take 2 steps with one, I would prefer to do that.
Well, it's fair enough. Thank you. Further questions? Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak to resolution number 2023-28? See nobody else in chambers or online, so we'll bring it back to council for comments, deliberation. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2023-28 is adopted. That brings us, how's everybody doing? Anybody want a break? Okay, let's take a 10-minute at ease. Back on the record. Council, we are now on item H6, discussion action, scheduling a council work session on employee recruitment and retention difficulties and recommendations for May 3rd, 2023 at 4:30 PM. And would like to just reference the laydown, which was included tonight. Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Yes, so started last fall with previous city manager. We established a personnel working group with a number of individuals in the administration to talk about some of the things in our code, but also looking at, the difficulty we're having in our recruitments now with the number of applicants significantly down from what we've seen in the past. And also looking at, retention of our employees is because, turnover of employees is extremely expensive. And coming up with ideas and identifying things that we could potentially change or recommend for change that could assist with that. I think that group is prepared right now to come before council, do a presentation, talk about some of those items. We still are meeting, we're still working. We're looking towards, if we get to do that employee compensation and classification study next year, there are other ideas that we have that we're looking to gather information during that process and continue the work. I think our goal is to keep the city of Kenai as a preferred employer, as a great employer, and a great place to work, so we attract and retain the best talent. So we're just asking if we could schedule a work session and do a presentation and talk about some of the work that group has put together.
Any questions of the city manager? He had a suggested time of May 3rd at 4:30 PM prior to our next council meeting. Councilmember Axton.
Thank you. Yeah, the time is fine with me, but I think the city of Soldotna just did something very similar, did they not? And are you kind of collaborating with them? I believe that's true.
Mr. Eubank.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Naxton. They did do something a little similar, but they actually hired an external consultant to come in and work with them on a lot of that work, where we've just worked internally with our department heads and our group to vet through this process. So that's the only one difference I can point out.
Councilmember Weaver.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I'm not sure if May 3rd is the set day. I'm unavailable. It's going to be hard for me just to be in attendance for the council meeting, as I will be at the Menard Center doing weigh-ins for wrestling at 5 o'clock. So doing a 4:30 would be hard for me on this day. It's going to be hard enough just to telephonic into that meeting.
Just curious, can we go over, I know we have 2 other scheduled special work sessions coming up, or can we go over the dates on those?
Ms. Center.
Thank you. We have a special meeting on Thursday, the 27th for employee evaluations, and then we have a work session on Saturday, the 29th. All day.
Budget work session.
Yeah, I just want to get it all together so you see where we're going with that.
For me, this would be nice to kind of shoehorn this in prior to the meeting, because then I would save a day. I've got a pretty booked up schedule here, at least for the next, almost through the middle of May at this point. Is there a chance you can toggle it? Go ahead.
Could we do it before the May 17th meeting?
Is this time sensitive, Mr. Eubank?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only portion of this that's really time sensitive is some of these items. Funding for that is being included in the proposed 24 budget, so it's to have enough time to fully vet that out for council in their consideration of the budget. We would be looking to introduce the actual budget adoption ordinance at that second meeting in May for action at the first meeting in June. So it's just trying to make sure we meet a timeline to where we can, give council enough information to truly consider the budget, as well as any code amendments, because some of these will require code amendments to have those in effect in effect as soon as we can into fiscal '24 as well. So that's why we tried to pick the 3rd.
Certainly, I see where you're going with that. I guess if Ms. Swinger can't make it there, can we get her the material that was provided for the work session? That I think, we're not going to be taking any action there, and have her follow up with a meeting with you or to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Always, we'd be happy to get you the information as well as sit down with you and walk through it at a more convenient time for any council member that's unable to make anything that we do.
Councilman Raskin.
I won't be here in person, but I will call in.
Very good. Councilmember Dowtha.
The 17th, probably that day at 4:30 wouldn't work for me unless conveniently I hire somebody. Go figure. But I'm just short-staffed at the present moment also, so I'm having to cover for a while. So the 3rd I could do, I believe, at 4:30. The 17th would be tough for me at 4:30.
Yeah, so I guess my question would be, would that be acceptable, Councilman Winger, to meet with Terry and go over the materials and present in the work session?
Yeah, I'm happy to meet ahead of the 2nd.
Very good. Or even I think even after that, right? Just any time, yeah. Okay. Is everybody else good with May 3rd at 4:30? Very good. And I guess I would ask that the clerk, I'm sure she'll be sending out an invite with all the applicable materials. So 4:30, May 3rd. That brings us to commission committee reports. First up, Council on Aging.
Mayor,
Councilman Knight.
I covered that one on last time. They didn't have they had a work session rather than a regular meeting on April 13th, and they reviewed and modified recommendations anywhere, the rules of conduct there at the senior center, and they also went over the senior fee schedule, had some general discussion on that, and I think that's going to be, both of those will be coming up at their next regular meeting, and I do not have the date for their next meeting in front of me.
Airport Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. We met on April 13th in a work session regarding landscaping at the airport, and the next meeting will be May 11th.
Thank you. Harbor Commission.
We had a meeting scheduled for the 10th. We did not have a quorum, unfortunately, so we weren't able to have a meeting. So we'll shoot for the 8th and see if we can get that scheduled and have enough individuals be able to show up so we can have a meeting.
Very good. Thank you. Parks and Recreation, or Harbor? That was Harbor, right? Because I had to.
I was gonna say, wait a minute,
I'm usually, I had my mind going somewhere. Parks and Recreation Commission.
No report for Parks and Rec. Their next meeting is May 4th.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. Planning and Zoning's next meeting is April 26th at 7 p.m. Their last meeting was postponed for lack of no business to conduct.
Thank you. Beautification Committee.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. At the Beautification Committee on Wednesday, they appointed Emily Hill as vice chair and appointed Sarah Dotha as chair for beautification. They supported both the policies that came before them from our body for the student rep policy changes, as well as the council's procedures and commission changes. The admin gave a report about some of the projects, specifically about the Hanson water fountain, how they had removed that from the capital plan and moved that to their special project request. They talked about the City Hall tree and planting day being the first weekend of June, and they plan on doing red, white, and blue theme in their flower planters this year. There was some discussion about wanting to know what their roles and responsibilities were as far as being involved. So they wanted specifically to be involved in conversations when it came to the banners that went up on the light poles, and anything else that would be up their alley, such as the flower hill being treated and planted. And our next meeting will be on May 9th.
Thank you. Under report of the mayor, we've done the mayoral proclamation for the Kenai Cardinal cheer team. I want to thank Councilmember Dothett and Vice Mayor Bazin and our city clerk with putting that together. And then I've got just a real quick report here. I did attend via Zoom the Alaska Conference of Mayors meeting this morning and was given a legislative update of where the legislature is in the presentation by Nils Andreasen of all the bills they're tracking and how that might affect. But it's a good discussion on how those bills could potentially affect other communities. So it was interesting to listen to those folks and kind of what they're for and what they're against. And that's my report. I will move to administration reports with City Manager, Mr. Ebank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things for council. I do want to draw council's attention to a memo that's in the packet from Chief Pryor. It's on page 113 of your packet. It talks about the Healthy and Equitable Communities Grant Program that the city is participating in. Round one of that program, the city was allocated about a little over $43,000. We were also successful. The Kenai Peninsula Borough allocated us their share, which was the same amount. We originally met as a group and came together with a list of a number of projects that met the provisions of the grant program. Those projects are listed here. Initially, that $86,000 or so was allocated to build a bridge across the gully between Municipal Park and the baseball fields on that side. It was determined that that wasn't feasible with that budget, so we moved that money. That's what's going to be replacing the playground equipment over here on the park strip here in May. Round two of that program is coming out. The city's share in round two, I think, is around $134,000. Chief Pryor has reached out to the borough, seeking if they're interested in allocating us their share again. They didn't have time. They have to go through a legislative process to do that, so that's something we're continuing to work on and see if they have interest in doing that. But I wanted to let council know the project we put forward for the second round of funding was, with the roof work and other work going on at the rec center, the next things that need to get taken care of over there is refinishing of the gym floor and things like that. That's a project that's been included in our application at this point. And we will continue to work off of this list with other projects and as additional funds come available. But I wanted council to be aware that we were submitting the gym floor for round two of this grant program. Couple other things. FEMA, as you know, the city is now part of the National Flood Insurance Program. FEMA is developing new flood maps for the Kenai River area. They have interest in coming and presenting on those maps. And we have a couple of options. They would like to do a single meeting rather than two. We think it would be important for planning and zoning to see those presentations. And I guess what I was looking for a little bit from council is if there's council interest in seeing that presentation, then we would try to schedule that as a joint work session or joint session between council and the Planning and Zoning to have that done. If it's something we just want to do with the Planning and Zoning Commission, there is the opportunity for some council members to attend to see the presentation there, but it is limited without other noticing requirements if more than 3 you were there. So I'm a little interested in what council's interest is in seeing the presentation of those new maps by FEMA, or if they would just like us to schedule that with Planning and Zoning. Being a little sensitive, I know there's a lot of meetings scheduled in the not so distant future.
Councilmember Dothett.
On that, would that be something that Planning and Zoning could come to our meeting and it would just be a public presentation with them present, or no?
That is what we will do if council has interest. We will schedule it as a council, and we will invite planning and zoning to come.
Vice Mayor Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. I would prefer no additional meetings for either group. It will be recorded, am I correct? So we could watch it. I would think it'd be better to be at P and Z, and then we can all watch it, and not have to have another meeting for either group extra, in my opinion.
Councilmember Weiner.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I would like to watch it, and I'd be happy with just watching it for the comfort of my home.
Councilmember Dauphin.
I guess either watching it or in person. I would not want to have to do another special meeting for us to go to P&Z. I think either having them come here and see the presentation, or I guess we just log in and get the presentation. I'm assuming it'd be some materials that we could probably get in hard copy too, in our packet possibly.
Mr. Eubank.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we can absolutely pass any information on in their presentation to council.
Councilmember Jackson.
And I thought that's, that you were planning on having it during the planning and zoning meeting, and that's what my preference would be. And if I'm available, I'd like to go to it so I can ask questions if I'm available. Otherwise, I'll be able to watch it, like was pointed out.
Vice Mayor Basin.
And I'll just make one more comment. I'm okay giving up my chair seat if somebody needs to go to it, and I'll watch it on video later.
I'll let you iron that out, but yeah, if we could have a summary report included in council packet, that would be appreciated.
Perfect. We'll make sure that happens. Couple other things, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Well, I'm going to say it, and I hope I don't eat these words. I kind of ate these words last week, but everybody looks to the groundhog to tell us when spring's here. I actually look to our street crew, and when they start sweeping the streets and parking lots, that tells me spring is here. They started a little bit last week, and then it snowed for 2 days, but I think it's here. I think so. I'm confident in saying it. They're out trying to get dust control done right now, knock down the dust. It's a little bit of pain for a lot of gain down the road, but I think spring is here, so I hope everybody can enjoy it. Here tonight, I hope all of you got your copies of the 2024 proposed budget. I got to give some special recognition to Mr. Simmons and Miss Lana Metcalf for all their hard work and helping get that document put together. It was a heavy lift, and I really appreciate your guys' help. So we'll look forward to our work session with you on the 29th to go over that. I do appreciate you scheduling that work session to discuss employee recruitment and retention issues. I think that group has been working really hard, and I'm anxious for you to see some of their suggestions. Speaking of recruitment, we have 2 candidates. We don't typically do this. We have 2 candidates that we are going to bring in for second interviews for the finance director position. One will be here tomorrow, and one will be here next week. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but we look forward to meeting with both those in person and conducting second interviews. We have interviews scheduled for tomorrow and Friday for the Parks and Rec director position. So we'll be conducting those. I think that's all I have to report, Mr. Mayor, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, City Manager, Councilmember Naxton?
Thank you. The annual budget that I have here, which I'm going to be reading, what are the top 5 things that are either staying the same or changing? What doesn't have to be 5 things, but what are the top few things that we can expect to find in there?
Mr. Eubank.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Naxton, I think the predominant thing that gave the administration the most difficulty and took the most time and consideration is dealing with personnel and focusing on recruitment and retention of our people and how we affect that, and yet be extremely mindful of the financial resources of the city and making sure that what we're doing is is sustainable. So I think that's in there. I think you're going to continue to see a commitment by the city for continuing to invest in our capital infrastructure, you know, to paving roads, to fixing our buildings, and to maintaining the things that we have, not looking to add a bunch of things, but just maintain what we have and be responsible. And I think it's again, it's a fiscally conservative budget. It does not increase tax, doesn't propose any increase in taxes, which would be extremely difficult in these times. I mean, inflation is brutal right now, but it's being felt by the taxpayers as well. So I hope what you see is a fiscally conservative budget, but yet one that is to be mindful of the city's, you know, biggest resource, which I think is our people and our employees, and without them, it's difficult to do what we do. So I don't know if that's 5 things, but I think that's what gave us the most trouble, and you know, caused me a couple of sleepless nights, but we'll get there, and you know, we got a good group of people to work with.
Further questions of the city manager, Councilmember Winger?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Just on the Spruce Bark conversation, do we have a goal on the Spruce Bark dump site to be open? I know they said within the next couple of weeks. I was kind of hoping to see it plowed out or something. And do we have a goal on that?
Mr. Bank?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Winger. I will tell you, I think it's going to be as soon as we can, but it is a little bit weather dependent. I have heard Public Works is even interested in bringing in some gravel to try to, the road is the issue, okay? It's not a real road, and it's really sloppy right now, and there's a lot of snow. So until that snow melts and that dries off, it would be slip sliding away, getting in there with your pickup trucks and things. So I have heard that they're looking at trying to bring in some gravel too to help speed up that process, but we're going to get it open as soon as we can. Just a little bit at the mercy of last winter's snowfall, but we are committed to that.
Thank you.
Further questions, city manager? Seeing none, we'll go to the city attorney, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, members of council. I don't have anything to report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the city attorney? Seeing none, we'll move to the city clerk, Ms. Sainer.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Just going to all of the board and commission meetings recently and with the policies was enjoyable, getting to see all of them again in their process, and I'm looking forward to finalizing that document. Thank you.
Further, any questions of the city clerk? Seeing none, we'll go to additional public comment. Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to the council at this time? Ms. Nelson.
Sorry. I should know that after helping Dwayne out here. Well, there's a few things going on. One is this Friday, the Humanities Forum, which is, of course, located in Anchorage, and they will be here having a dinner for some people, a few people, over at the Cannery Lodge and trying to make their presence known in this area again. They have done that more in the past, but not so much in the last number of years, and they're another source of funding for different aspects of the arts and humanities, and oftentimes they work together with the State Council on the Arts or Rasmussen or whoever. You know, they all try to make the maximum use out of their dollars, and that's, of course, the same game we play. So Alex Rydlinski, our executive director, and myself will be attending that. And coming up, that's a big fun thing, the Potters Guild is having their Mother's Day pottery sale, and we, for whatever reason, didn't think of this a few years ago, but we do now. We put in big tables in the main gallery, and they bring all their pottery in to sell for those sale days that happen occasionally during the year, which just is a total win-win. They sell more, we make a little more in commission on their sales, and the crowd comes in and they have a great time. It's great. So they bust their butt when it comes to getting ready for their various big event sales. This is one of them. We appreciate the city helping us out with not just plowing, but scooping up the snow before the last big event, the show opening for the current show, the school kids show. There's always a huge crowd about that, which I talked about the last time, but it wasn't a question of plowing, and there's a lot of big ice lumps in the street. That's not a street that gets a lot of attention because it's a very low-traffic street, so I can understand that. So anyway, Scott Curtin is very responsive to that, and I call it, say, we've got this going on, and there's a real problem here, and so they bring over the big dump things and take care of it. The next show that we have coming is a artist from Anchorage. I can't remember his first name, his last name is Perry. I'm not overly familiar with him, but he has worthy art stuff. It'll be on the walls, not on the floor, so that will be what that looks like. And as you know, we do have a Rasmussen grant in the works. Hasn't been awarded yet. We have to win that game. And so I have been gathering a lot of favorable comments of people who support the Art Center in various ways, and that's been extremely rewarding. I won't talk about it or I'll start crying, so it's been great. I think that's about it for me. Any questions? And we thank Mayor Gabriel and Councilman Naxted for lending a couple of positive support statements regarding the Rasmussen grant too, which incidentally is boiler, roof, walls, on exterior walls. It's, what else is there? Can't think. Anyway, it's very nuts and bolts kind of grant request for the money. It's not, we want to expand the Art Center, which of course would be just a dream come true, but no, it's absolutely helping that poor old building kind of limp along a little bit longer, a lot longer.
Mary, your Mother's Day pottery sale, what day and time was that? Did you mention that?
I don't remember the time. It'll be by Mother's Day weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sonart.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So the May show, is that the
The
artist?
which show?
The month of May?
Yes?
The May show, is that the artist from Anchorage?
Yes.
Will there be like
There'll be an opening.
an opening? Do you know the date and time of that?
First Thursday, 5 to 7.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional comments, questions? So
We'll have some workshops lined up too between now and then. I don't remember what's kind of tentatively on deck, but we're definitely planning for this summer and hoping that that fence gets dealt with in the park next to us and what we can do to enhance that art-wise. And I will also request again to be involved at some level with the planning for that. I know Nancy Casey, the landscape architect, who is probably going to help with that design. I've worked with her a lot in the past when she was on my garden club board. And so I think I could at least be an asset at some level for that process.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Any further questions, comments? As always, a pleasure to see you.
Thank you. Well, don't miss the kids show. It's definitely a very enlightening show, a very fun show. And a lot of you have been there already, but we've got the rest of the month for it to shine over there and show off what our kids are doing. And it's pretty fun. Pretty fun.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anybody else from the general public who'd like to address the council this time? Nobody online? Seeing none, we'll go to council comments. Councilmember Dothett.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on a few things with the Kenai Chamber. They have a Mother's Day Bazaar coming up the 29th and 30th. It's full. It's full, yeah, they've had a really good turnout. We've seen a huge turnaround over there. We're bringing new light over to that chamber, and I encourage everybody to go over there and check it out. It's really, it's an amazing quick turnaround. I'm very pleased with our current staff there. And then the 24th of June, there's going to be the Fish Frenzy. That's their annual fundraiser. It's going to be an outdoor event. And okay.
She is a gift to all of us. I'm really happy that we have new blood for sure, new life.
Thank you. And then speaking of new blood over there, I think we can actually say we have a fully staffed chamber for the first time in quite a while. We have Nina Ross, will be starting our year-round representative position in the front desk. And then a seasonal position was hired. Wendy Hales will be doing the seasonal position over there. And then our programs coordinator, we just hired our full-time programs and facilities coordinator. Liam Floyd will be coming down on the 8th. He starts on the 8th, and we're pretty excited about him. He's will be coming down from UAA. He was up there doing their facilities and programs coordination and stuff. So I think it's going to be a huge asset for us down here. So yeah, as of currently, we will be fully staffed for the first time in a long time. It's pretty awesome.
Thank you. Student Representative Thibodeau.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Just a few things to report. One, the varsity baseball team left today for Kodiak. I believe they went to Anchorage to catch a plane to Kodiak, so they didn't take the ferry, thank goodness. They will be having, I believe, 2 games. I don't know exactly when, though, but let's hope they kick Kodiak's butt. As well, this Friday and Saturday, the Smash Ultimate team for Kenai, the esports team, will be going up to Anchorage for the state finals. All 4 of our teams got into top 16. Unfortunately, we can only take 2 teams. We have the first place team, and we have, I believe, the 6th place team in the state right now. So we'll be going up Friday and Saturday. Hopefully we'll take home the first place. Last Saturday was prom. It was eventful, I would say. It was prom. We'll leave it at that. Nothing really much else to say. It's nearing the end of the year, and I hope it finishes smoothly.
What was the prom theme?
Oh, the prom theme was Midnight Gardens. Don't ask me what it means, because I don't know.
Sounds exotic. Councilmember Sonert.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I'd like to thank Chief Pryor for his presentation tonight on the spruce bark mitigation. That's been just heavy on my mind the last few years, and I can actually kind of rest easy knowing that you guys have a great plan and you are working your plan. So thank you very much. And also, I do have people that ask me about what's the city doing about these dead trees, and I can tell them, well, they're actively cutting them down. And I'd also like to thank Councilmember Naxted for stepping in for me last week for the Council on Aging meeting. I appreciate that. And just happy spring, everybody.
Thank you. Councilmember Askin.
I just want to remind everybody that Friday and Saturday, the Triumphant Theater is performing the Codfather. And Saturday night also is a fundraiser for hospice. And happy spring.
Thank you. Councilmember Ware.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I just wanted to say congrats to the Kenai cheerleaders again. They had an amazing season. They brought home first. I also would just like to thank Mr. Pryor for all your work on the spruce bark mitigation. It's definitely much appreciated. I know I've sounded off on dead trees for a very long time, but we really do appreciate your work and efforts on this. Collaboratively working with forestry as well, so huge thank you to forestry for working with our city on that. Just a reminder, I will not be at the budget meeting. I will be in the Valley. I don't know where I am at half the time. So every weekend I have been in the Valley, Fridays and Saturdays, coming home extremely late. We are at the last grind of our wrestling season, going up the first week of May for state. Just as a little thing, my daughter took first in boys and girl bracket. She going up for her 4th weekend in a row trying to get first. So past 3 weekends, she's gotten first in both the boys and the girls brackets. My son's doing very well. So that's just kind of where we're at right now as a mom, just doing the competitive sports. And unfortunately, it doesn't really work up with all the work sessions. So I thank administration for working with us and around our schedule as a family right now. And that's all I have, and I will see you guys next meeting.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Beza.
Thank you, Mayor. It's always fun recognizing our student athletes like we do with the cheer team. Hopefully the esports team, we can recognize you next, Silas.
If we take home first, I might just ask you.
Well, you won't have to ask us. We will. the theme, you must have been, I saw pictures of you dressed up on social media, so you must have understood the prom theme. I did see you up there. You were dressed up. You looked really nice. Again, with the high school, it was pretty neat seeing the Kenai kids show up over in Soldotna and help them clear their fields. That was broadcast all over the place, so it just kind of shows our community, even though we compete against each other, we're pretty tight. That's kind of fun to watch, and I'm glad that spring is here. Thanks for that, Terry.
Thank you, Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you. Spring definitely is here. The geese have arrived, so that's my litmus test. But I also wanted to echo my appreciation of the chamber and your new head over there, and some of those that I haven't met yet, and it sounds like they're also very well qualified. But I've been quite impressed. In a short period of time, all the things that have happened, and in the social media, there was the goings-on up in Anchorage, and it was broadcast pretty well through social media and all that, but she's doing a wonderful job, and I've heard her on the radio and all of that, so perfect. I think it's great for Kenai. Really looking forward to that. And I guess finally I'll be at the hospice fundraiser this Saturday also, and I suppose there's probably still some tickets available over there. That's all I have.
Thank you. And seeing no, we don't have an executive session or pending items before us this evening. Seeing none, no other business for this body, we are adjourned.
Goodbye.